Right, good morning. Welcome to this morning's meeting of the Employment Committee. Turning to item 1 on the agenda, I'd like to confirm that Mr Breckham was nominated as Chairman-elect at the Council meeting on the 19th of May 21 and asks that the committee confirm that this is agreed. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I propose Mr Breckham.
Second. Over to you then, Mr Breckham.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting in this municipal year of the Employment Committee. As usual, the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and will also be available for viewing after the meeting. The link is available on the County Council's website. This will be the first time that this committee has met for more than a year, and certainly probably in face-to-face. Gordon McFarlane, the Assistant Director, is here in the room with us, as is Sarah Short, so good morning. Other officers presenting reports will be joining us virtually. Can I please ask that all members and officers have their microphone on mute until they wish or are invited to speak, and that the officers switch their video cameras on only when presenting reports. Can you ensure that mobile phones are switched to silent? Before we move to agenda item 2, as we have a few new members joining the committee, I'm going to ask that members introduce themselves. My name is Lee Breckham. I'm lead member for resources and I'm chairing this committee.
Peter Bedford, I'm the lead member for COVID recovery and ways of working.
Thank you.
Kevin Feltham, I'm County Councillor for Gartree Division.
Thank you, Kevin.
Linda Broadley, Liberal Democrat County Councillor for Oban Wigston.
Oh, sorry. Good morning, Brenda Seaton, County Councillor for Thurmaston Ridgemere. Thank you.
Chairman Neil Bannister, County Councillor representing the Broughton Astley Division, and Chairman, I'm here this morning as a substitute for County Councillor Barry Champion.
Thank you, Chairman. Richard Shepherd, Sarby and the World Division, and supporting yourself, of course, on the resources portfolio.
Thank you, everyone. I have received apologies today from Mr Harrison Rushton, and Mrs Seaton, welcome, is substituting for him today, and also Mr Champion has apologised and say welcome to Neil and Mr Bannister, who is also substituting. Item 2 on the agenda is the election of Deputy Chairman, and I'm seeking nominations for the position of Deputy Chairman and ask the committee to confirm this. I understand Mr Richard Shepherd has been formally nominated, so can I formally nominate Richard as Vice Chair for this Deputy Chairman?
I nominate Mr Bedford as Deputy Chairman.
Oh, right, okay, that's Peter. In that case, are you happy to be? All right, in that case, I'm happy to second, so apologies about that. So it's everyone in favour? Do we need a? No, we don't. No, I think I was under the impression it was Mr Shepherd that was being Deputy Chairman, but it's actually Mr Bedford, so I apologise for that. Yes. Okay. All right. No, thank you. So if everyone's happy with that. Yeah. Sorry, Peter, misinformed conversation earlier, so it's. I second it, yes. Okay, congratulations, Peter. Item 3, we need to move and confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of February 2021. These are in your agenda pack, pages 3 to 6. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of February 2021 be taken as read, confirmed as signed. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Richard. Okay. All in favour? You were there, so it's, yeah, thank you. Agreed. Item 4 is question time. I have received no questions from members of the public. Item 5 is questions asked by members under Standing Orders 7.3 and 7.5. I can confirm that I've received no questions from members. Item 6 is to advise of any other items that the Chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. I have not been notified of any urgent items for this morning's meeting. Item 7 is declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Does anyone have any interest in respect of any items on the agenda they wish to declare? No. Okay, thank you. In which case we'll move on to item 8, which is our first report of the day. It's on the pay policy statement 2021, which is in your agenda packs, pages 7 to 24. I understand that Sarah is going to present this report for us. I don't know whether Gordon wants to say anything, but if not, I'll hand straight over to Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of the report is to seek approval for the Council's pay policy statement for the 2022-23 financial year, prior to this report going forward to the County Council for approval in December 2021. Under the Localism Act 2011, local authorities in England and Wales are required to produce and publish a pay policy statement for each financial year. The 22-23 statement needs to be published on or before the 1st of April 2022. I'd like to draw members' attention to the pay policy statement at Appendix A. For the purpose of the pay policy statement, remuneration includes basic salary, pension, and any other allowances arising from the employment relationship. The grading of all posts, with the exemption of centrally employed teachers, is determined by using the Hay Job Evaluation Scheme to ensure a fair, consistent and non-discriminatory process, and that the Council complies with equal pay legislation. No agreement has been reached as yet on the 2021-22 pay award. I do apologise for all the dates. This pay award extends to the National Joint Council, Chief Officers and Chief Executives. I also would like to highlight an error on page 9 of your pack. The pay offer for Chief Officers and Chief Executives is 1.5%, not 1.75% as stated. The NJC, so that's the National Joint Council pay offer, has been made by the national employers at 2.75% on the national lowest point of the pay spine and 1.75% on points 2 and above. And the trade unions are nationally balloting their members throughout September currently, we wait to hear the outcome of that ballot. If the trade unions do accept the pay offer, we will be required to have a review of our own locally agreed paid spine to accommodate that 2.75% offer on the bottom point of the pay spine, and also to incorporate any future increases that may happen in the national minimum wage. So in terms of the recommendations, the committee is asked to approve the pay policy statement 22-23 for submission to the County Council for approval, and also to note that the following agreement of the 2021-22 pay award at national level will be circulated to the committee.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Can I ask if any members have any questions or comments or observations? Mrs. Seaton, I was scanning the room. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah.
Thank you. It's just for my understanding, if that's okay. Is it usual that for point 1 and the point 2, is there usually a difference in the pay awarded?
Back in 2019, the pay award for 2019, there was some bottom loading on that bottom spinal column point of the pay award. And at that point in time, we conducted a review of the whole of our pay spine to accommodate those changes at national level. But the pay award for 2021, there wasn't any bottom loading.
Neil, sorry, Brenda.
Thank you for that, and it's quite pleasing to see that there is in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and an apology to the committee. I'm a little slow on the uptake, but I should have declared a personal interest, and it dawned on me as we took this paper. My daughter is employed as a teacher's assistant at a primary school in Burbage, and I think her employer is indeed Leicestershire County Council. So I want to declare that personal interest. I won't participate in the debate or the vote, if I may be so permitted.
I think as Neil's done that, my wife's teaching assistant at an LA school as well. So in that case, I'd have to declare. So here comes Mrs. Broadley as well. Linda?
I have a number of relatives that are employed by Leicestershire County.
Okay. Anyone be able to vote? We for it. Brenda?
I also have a daughter that is a teacher, and I don't know, I get a pension from the teacher's pension as well.
Okay. If we're able to proceed, I think that's interesting observations and declarations. So it's we are asked that we're asked to move that the pay policy statement 22/23 be approved for submission to the County Council for approval at its meeting on the 1st of December 2021, and that following an agreement to the national 21/22 pay offer at national levels, it be noted that the 21/22 pay structure incorporating the NJC 21/22 pay award will be circulated to the committee. So could I, happy to move that? Can I have a seconder? Okay, those that are able to vote, happy to vote. Show of hands. Yeah. Okay. It was Kevin, I think. Kevin seconded. Did you second, Kevin? Yes. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Sarah. Our next report, item 9, is the wellbeing update. This is on pages 25 to 32 of your agenda pack. I understand that Sharon Devlin, the HR and Organisational Development and Business Partner, will present the report. Gordon, shall I pass straight to Sharon, or have you got anything you want to add? Thank you. Good morning, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Devlin. I'm the HR and OD Business Partner for E&T, and I also have a corporate responsibility for wellbeing as part of the People Strategy. So I'm going to take you through this report this morning. So the purpose of the report is to inform the Employment Committee of the outcome of the 3rd Staff Wellbeing Survey, which was undertaken in May this year, and also the establishment of the Corporate Wellbeing Board. So really just to set some context, as you would imagine, staff wellbeing is a key part of the Council's People Strategy. And also my colleague Mark brought to you a report last December which went through the results of the 2nd round of the Wellbeing Survey and went through a number of actions which were in place to actually support wellbeing for all staff. So in terms of the wellbeing surveys, we have had 3. We had the first one in May last year, a second one in October, and the 3rd one this May. So I've described the survey there as a snapshot survey. The reason why we went for that shorter survey was we were conscious that staff had been asked for, several times for their opinions on this matter, and we were a little bit conscious of survey fatigue. Excuse me. So looking now at point 6 at the responses, you can see that the response for survey 3 was lower. Not ideal, but I think, again, this is to be expected in terms of surveys. The survey was promoted fully, but we do have a lower response rate there for the most recent survey, 23% of staff. Okay, so just to give you some headlines from the results of round 3. Overall, staff feel that the Council's response to the pandemic and the communication with them has been very positive, and that has been a consistent result from the 2nd round of the staff survey. We also asked staff about what they were worried about, and round 3, the results were that levels of worry had increased slightly since the 2nd round in relation to the impact on communities and service users. So a slight increase there. We also asked staff about their levels of worry in relation to their job, and actually this decreased by 14%, so quite a significant drop there since the second round. We also had a decrease in worry in relation to health, safety and well-being, and this decreased by 2% since the second survey. The survey asked how well informed do you feel from your manager, and the response from this question has remained consistently high across all the surveys, and you can see that under point 10 there. So 88.5% of respondents felt that they were well informed by their manager. And really, just to note to the committee that managers do have access to the full details of this survey, and I'm presenting council-wide results. However, we are able to drill down to service level, which has been very helpful. And I know that senior managers have taken a very detailed look at these responses and has enabled departments and services to really target how they use this information. So just going back to December, so the report which Mark presented detailed a number of actions which were in progress, and this really just to reassure the committee that these actions are still in progress and are being implemented. So just to give you a few examples of those actions, one was to further embed the manager's charter, which is ongoing. It was to promote good practice for staff in terms of how they can support their own well-being. There are still regular communications about that, and also the rollout of Microsoft Teams training. Okay, so moving down to people strategy and well-being. So well-being is a real key part of the council's people strategy. And through engaging with staff, but also through speaking to our own counsellors, which form part of our counselling service, it was clear that there were 4 areas of main concern to staff, and these were stress, bereavement, anxiety and depression. And it was felt that in order to address these key concerns, 4 topic areas would inform the majority of the wellbeing support and activities. And those areas were sleep, physical exercise, mindfulness and resilience. So the council has had a corporate wellbeing board for some time. That was in place some years ago, but I think in recent years that has lost a bit of its energy, a bit of its focus. So the people strategy committed to actually reviewing what framework and what support we had in terms of wellbeing on a corporate level. And in response to this, a new corporate wellbeing board has been set up. And if I could refer members to the diagram on the top of page 3, I think it is for me. So you can see the structure of the corporate wellbeing board. So it is chaired by Gordon, assistant director. It is supported by a people services wellbeing task group, and the idea behind that task group is that will provide some support and resources to departments. You will also see that each department is represented, and I think that this is a real key part of the corporate wellbeing board. I think it's recognised that yes, we do have corporate-wide initiatives, but the idea behind the departmental reps is that they will be able to feed in what really works for their departments and what works for their services. And a key role for those departmental representatives is for them to interpret and really consolidate those activities within their own departments. And in terms of at the recent Corporate Wellbeing Board, the action plan was agreed, and you have that as part of your papers this morning. I really just want to note that this is a live document and will be reviewed on a regular basis. So you will see that the action plan is quite detailed. You will see that there's there is the emphasis on those 4 key areas of concern and those 4 ways that we can tackle those areas of concern. But I just want to highlight the first 2 items there. So there was a consensus that actually corporately we do have a comprehensive wellbeing offer. We felt that there was some work to do in terms of consolidating that information to all staff and making sure that staff were aware and signposted to all that information. And the second item talks about groups which we are calling hard to reach groups. So those staff who are frontline, who don't have access to an LCC computer, but also groups who are possibly much more in need of this support. And the board felt that it was important to actually identify those groups, and therefore we can pay some more attention to those groups and identify how best we can support those groups. And this is why those departmental representatives are going to be really important in that. Okay, so in terms of next steps, so the Corporate Wellbeing Board will continue to meet on a quarterly basis and will implement the agreed plan alongside colleagues across the council. And the committee will be provided with regular updates on the success and implementation of that plan. So really, just to conclude in terms of some key messages. So the results from round 3 illustrate a consistent satisfaction with how the council is managing the pandemic and also how managers are communicating with employees. In terms of what staff are worried about, staff are significantly less worried about their job, but they are slightly more concerned about the impact upon service users and the community. And also, the Corporate Wellbeing Board will consider the results from round 3, which will help to inform the Wellbeing Action Plan, which really underlines what I said in terms of it being a live document which will evolve over time. So just ending on the recommendation there. So the Employment Committee is asked to note the continued focus on staff wellbeing and resilience across the council, the results of the 3rd Wellbeing Survey, and the establishment of the Corporate Wellbeing Board and the Wellbeing Action Plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. I think certainly the wellbeing offer that we have as a county council is very thorough and very detailed. So, members, any questions or comments? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment that Sharon pointed out, I think point 3 about the survey responses. In the private sector, there are a number of similar kind of surveys. One I'm aware of is Quest, where a couple of times a year, the organisation I work for receives these, and the response rate tends to be around 80%. So I'm surprised that the response rates there are so low. I just wondered, what the organisation could do to try and ensure, more engagement, I guess, with this.
Yeah, ideally, we would prefer a higher response rate, and I think that's something that we would and that we need to work on. That's something which we can discuss with our business intelligence colleagues to see whether there are other options for us around that.
Gordon. Sorry, just to add to what Sharon said, I think surveys weren't long, but they did take a few minutes to complete. And I suspect, I don't know the Quest survey, but I suspect it might be a really short snap survey, which people can perhaps spend a couple of minutes completing. And we may be able to move to something like that. And it's almost this is too simple, but how are you feeling today? We could get into something like that to just try and establish where people are at. So we could certainly look at moving in that direction.
Linda.
Thank you. And thank you for a very well written report. It was very informative. I would like to see something in a report on lone workers, because the stress, especially during the pandemic, on lone workers has been tremendous. And although the report touches on different groups, I would like to see sort of a separate group for lone workers, because I do think that they probably need a lot more support than other groups. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's something which we can definitely draw out in terms of when we're looking at the staff groups to actually focus on, that can be one of our kind of issues that we can look at and focus on. Thank you.
Okay. Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. I was interested in Peter's comment, and so could I sort of perhaps ask Peter through you, from your experience, in another organisation, is a magic bullet, but is there something which you can perceive which we're not doing here, which we could do to increase the response rate you referred to?
I think Gordon alluded to, looking at the structure. I mean, so the Quest survey that I've seen, there tends to be one annual survey that's done, which is quite a long survey. It probably takes 10-15 minutes to complete all the questions, probably 100 questions on a lot of different areas, focusing on different aspects of well-being. But then halfway through the year, there's a half-year mini Quest survey that goes out, which is probably about 20 questions, which is more snappy, and the response rate tends to be a lot higher because it's less time-consuming for employees to complete. So, yeah, that might be something to explore.
I think just a couple of things. I think we have to remember the complexity and the makeup of our organisation, that we've got lots of people, several thousand, who aren't regularly on email and don't get electronic, prompts to complete surveys. So we have to think of other ways of doing that. And I think the other bit, and Sharon alluded to this, was that the percentage, the completion rates came down. So we had high completion rates in a very short space of time in the first survey. I suspect by the time we got to the second and third surveys, because they were largely the same, people felt, well, I've already told you, or I'm satisfied with what the council's doing, or you haven't done anything, so what's the point in telling you again? It could be a whole range of things. So I wasn't particularly surprised to see it coming down. And it was probably right to do at the time, but you could argue it was a little too frequent. So I think we learn and we move on. We think about what we do in the future.
Brenda.
What I was going to ask is along the same lines. So we've all sort of homed in on that, and I think you've just answered my question, because Sharon did mention the survey fatigue, and I know that sometimes when I went into work, if one person asked me how I was in that concerning manner, I'd say, well, I'm fine, thank you. But if I'd got 3 or 4, by the end of the day, I'd probably go home sick, because obviously people think that there's something wrong. So that there is that problem, isn't there? And as you said, well, they didn't do anything last time to make things better for me, or I saw no changes. So my question was, are there any thoughts of other ways to collect the data and to engage people, which has been answered here. So it would be good to centre the thoughts on other ways to collect that data instead of a survey. But I've got no idea, so I shall hand that over to you, Sharon.
Could I please just make a point, if I may? So I'm aware that E&T are conducting their own departmental wellbeing survey, and it'll be really interesting to see the results from that. And I think benefit of that is that it's more specific to those people who actually work for the department, and they can make it a bit more specific to those roles. So it will be really interesting to see the results from that, but also the response rate. And that's something which we can feed back to the committee.
Neil.
Thank you, Sharon, for the report, and I'm very pleased to see the work and the action plan that's being developed to promote wellbeing with members of staff. But just to develop on the theme that is being discussed this morning on the lack of response, noting that from the first survey to the third survey, it's almost halved in terms of those that have responded. Really just 2 points to add to the discussion. One, 23%. It doesn't really tell me how many members of staff, 23% actually indicate. So in terms of numbers, is that a credible amount of people in which to respond? I expect the answer is yes, but I would still like to see the number. And the second point is, rather than assume why people are not responding to survey, whether it's survey fatigue or whether they're happy or whether they're not happy, is it possible in the next survey to pop in a question about, if you didn't respond to the last survey, can you tell us why? Any comment on that, Sharon?
Thank you. Okay. In terms of the numbers, I can provide you with those numbers now. So in terms of survey 1, where the response rate was 44%, that equates to 3,019 staff. Survey 2, that was 2,234. And survey 3, so 23% equates to 1,459. So that's the numbers there. And also, I think it's worth just pointing out that around that time of round 3, we also had the general staff survey, which was being promoted, and also a Stonewall survey. So I think that just maybe comes back to that survey fatigue issue, which we highlighted. I think in terms of the suggestion about trying to find out why people haven't responded, I think that's extremely valid, and I think that there is some work that we can do there to actually find out why people haven't responded. Is it a case of they don't have the facility to do it? They feel they don't have the time. Maybe they feel that it wasn't communicated, so they weren't aware of it. Or maybe, as Gordon has alluded to earlier, people feel that, oh, there's no point completing the survey because nothing happened last time. So I think that level of intelligence is helpful in order for us to actually improve next time. So yes, that is definitely something that I think we can look at. So thank you for that suggestion.
I think the only thing I'd add, I think drop myself in it by saying, nothing happened last time. To qualify that, we tried to be really clear with people where we had some control and where we could take action, and where people were perhaps concerned about the wider economy or their families, etc., where we acknowledged that and we could provide some sort of support, but we couldn't actually influence change. So there was probably a need to just put some meat on the bones of that particular one, rather than we just didn't do anything.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think that was good debate. Obviously, we are passionate about the well-being of our staff, which is good to see. So sorry, Linda. Yeah.
If I can just make a comment, I used to work for Leicestershire County Council, and I know from colleagues that I worked with at the time, one of their concerns is filling in these surveys is that they're identified. If they're suffering from depression or they've got major problems and their employer knows, is it going to affect my employment, that type of thing. So there is that as well, alongside other issues why people won't. But I think it needs to be made clearer that you cannot be identified by these surveys, because that is people's major concern, as far as I was aware.
Okay, Gordon.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. There's a perception when people submit personal details or complete surveys that actually will use that in the wrong way or be able to identify people. And I think it's a constant battle to be able to get that message across, that we'll aggregate information, we'll use it sensibly, and I think if people look back, they won't see the evidence where that information has been misused, but it's quite hard to break that cycle. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So well discussed, well debated. It's interesting. I think before the pandemic, we always used to think about our physical health. And I think the pandemic brought in the word mental health as well. And so we have two types of health, and I think that's come to the fore. And I think this survey this report shows that very well. So I'm happy to move that the continued focus on staff wellbeing, resilience across the council, the results of the third wellbeing survey, the establishment of the corporate wellbeing board, and the wellbeing action plan be noted. So members happy. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I need a seconder. So have someone have a second? Okay, Peter Bedford, happy to second. So all in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Sharon, for the report as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 10 on the agenda is the attendance management. This is on pages 33 to 38 of the agenda pack. And I understand that Andrea Denham, HR Services Manager, will present the report. If Gordon, you've got nothing you wish to add at the start of it. So, Andrea, over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to update the Employment Committee on the position for sickness absence at the end of March 2021. Due to work that's currently progressing on our reporting, there's still progress in terms of implementing the council's new finance and HR system. So the 31st of March 21 is currently the latest position, which is why we currently have that as the reporting position within this document. So at the committee last met in February and looked at the position at the end of November 2020. So this is a new position for the committee. So at the bottom of page 33 is a summary of the previous 4 years plus the quarters 1 to 4 for 2021. And over the page, as you will see, I've summarised that at the end of the financial year, Chief Executive's Department, Environment and Transport, Public Health are all below the corporate target of 7.5 days. And across all of the departments, we've seen a decrease in absence, and the corporate target was of 7.5 days was very closely met by 7.51 days at the corporate level. So we were extremely close to meeting that at the end of the financial year. Moving on to reasons for absence, you've got a range of quarters over the last 2 years up to the end of March. As you will see, I've put these the top 10 reasons in order of the most time lost. Stress, mental health, other musculoskeletal, COVID-19, and days lost due to cancer were the top 4 reasons that we lost time due to employees needing to take sickness absence. Those have all increased. We did make improvements in undisclosed absence, which was an area that committee had previously asked for specific work to be undertaken. And behind the scenes, myself and my colleague business partners have been doing work with departments to make efforts with managers to make sure that we improve that figure. So I'm really pleased to be able to report today that we have made improvements and we will continue to do that work. Changing trends. We previously discussed in February around changing trends in absence relating to the period of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that we'd started to see some changes in the way that absence was presenting itself in terms of reasons for absence. On page 35, I've tried to summarise this into a table which I hope will be helpful in terms of showing this in terms of figures. You can see that cough, cold, flu, we'd seen a significant change, 65% reduction compared to a previous period. Gastric illness, musculoskeletal, absence due to back and neck issues had all significantly reduced in this last period compared to a period before. My feelings in terms of looking at the data are that things like the lockdown, social distancing from each other has prevented things like germs, not only in the workplace, but actually in the community in general. We haven't been spreading germs between each other, which has meant that these types of illnesses haven't spread generally in the population, in the community, which has meant that these things haven't presented themselves within our workforce. We have seen from managers that staff have been able to manage some lower level absence because more people have been working from home, so they've been able to manage symptoms and keep working. But generally, what the reports from managers have been is that people haven't been catching things because they've been more socially distanced from these germs. One of the other things that we've seen is that musculoskeletal injuries have been less. I think there was a concern that because people might be more working from home, we might see more of that potentially, but actually we've seen a lot less of that. We know that people were going out for their wellbeing walks. We know that some services were temporarily held back or closed for periods. We don't know exactly why that was, but actually there is a reduction in musculoskeletal. It's probably a number of different factors that have caused that. Time lost due to mental health has been slightly lower over the pandemic period. As Sharon has explained to committee this morning, extremely helpfully for me and in great detail before my report, our wellbeing offer is very, very good. It's been a real focus during the pandemic period, and managers have really stepped up and made this a priority for them and their staff, and it's really shown in terms of the figures in terms of attendance and sickness absence that we haven't seen an increase in people having sickness absence due to mental health. It's actually been lower. So there's real credit to people that are working on initiatives within health and safety and HR, but also all of the managers on the ground that are doing all of the hard work. Cancer treatment, we know that we've had some changes over the pandemic period in terms of the amount of time lost due to cancer. At the point that I wrote this report, there'd been a decrease in the amount of time lost due to cancer, but we know that over the pandemic period there was some fluctuations, and we know that the NHS had some real challenges in terms of providing timely cancer treatment in terms of its usual waiting times, but we've provided extra wellbeing support. We've prioritised our wellbeing support for people that are going through this, particularly during the pandemic period. We've really tried to pull out all the stops to do what we have within our power to support anybody that's been going through this during this very difficult time. The Office of National Statistics has reported that during this period that overall all sectors have seen a reduction in absence, probably because of the things I've talked about, more home working, but generally because we've been socially distanced from each other and we haven't been spreading, germs and illness between us, kind of non-COVID illness. So our position does reflect other sectors and the general population. We are continuing to monitor and look at our absence and see where those changes are. We've made real gains in terms of our progress, our attendance management. There is a lot of work and progress that's been made in terms of the way that our managers manage attendance and our staff's attitude and understanding of the expectations around attendance. We want to make sure that as we move through the pandemic and into a more regular way of working, in our new ways of working, that we don't lose all of those gains. Over onto the next few pages, I've detailed the long and short-term split of absence, which is the usual picture where we have more of a balance of long-term time lost than short-term lost, and then I've split down the service level data. There isn't anything for me that particularly stands out as unusual over this period. We've had it looks like a similar period of time, but we've generally got gains or reductions, gains in terms of improvements, reductions across the board in all the different areas where I would expect to see them. But if there are any queries about anything in particular, I can take questions about those. The committee is asked to note the contents of my report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. I think to me, I think there needs to be an overriding note attached to the last 12 months figures, and I think COVID has affected the way we operate. And I think the increase or decrease in the various figures, I mean, it's a very detailed report, but a very informative report. But I think the ability, certainly in the pandemic year, for people to access treatment and diagnosis of a lot of what has decreased may well have an impact on it. But any comments or questions from members? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments from me. Absolutely agree with a lot of what was said around the rationale behind some of the falls in, absence rates, particularly cold and flu. Obviously, it's quite clear, with the social isolation, few of the transmissions going on. I was surprised about these musculoskeletal fall, actually, given people are using their own equipment at home more, and I know the authority's been supporting that, but that was a surprise to me that actually that'd fallen as well. I just had a few questions. On point 6, you mentioned about the not disclosed position. I just wondered what the background to that is. Why is it not disclosed when people have a particular sickness? I just wonder what the context behind that category was. In terms of point 11 about mental health, I think that's really reassuring to see that despite as Councillor Broadie mentioned earlier, lone working, the support the authority has given for mental health over the last 18 months is such that the figures have fallen there as well, which is reassuring to see. And a final point from me was on, I guess it's ensuring that we've got like a balanced approach. I can always play devil's advocate a little bit in that, could there be an element of sickness has fallen because people are working at home more now, and therefore sickness is not recorded as it would have been had they physically had to have been in office 5 days a week. So whereas before it would be obvious if someone wasn't present because of not being there at their desk, is there an element of, okay, clearly over the last 18 months, physical visibility isn't there? Could that filter through to these figures in terms of the decline we've seen in sickness absence?
Am I able to respond to those questions, Chair?
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, if I can start with the not disclosed. This is a legal point. Legally, people are able to not disclose their reason for absence initially for the 5 days prior to them getting a doctor's note. Clearly, we would want them to discuss with their manager why they were absent, in order that we can support them. There are sometimes issues with breakdown in relationships between managers, and staff, which is the reason for absence occasionally. Often the reasons that they go down as not disclosed are administration issues rather than that. So what we are trying to do is resolve the administration issues and not the actual real non-disclosure issues. In terms of the not recorded, I can absolutely understand this perception. I can give my opinion as an HR business partner. I work with Children's Services, Corporate Resources and Chief Execs. And obviously I've got my other business partner colleagues with me. What I see within departments is managers under pressure to deliver productivity. I don't believe that whether they have a staff member sitting in front of them or sitting at a computer, they have anywhere to let productivity go. And they've actually kept in touch very, very well and managed productivity very actively with staff. Is there some areas where absence is not recorded? Probably. There probably was before. There's always going to be pockets of that. I don't myself see that the new ways of working is is masking non-recording, because with the resources, the pressure on resources and the pressures on budgets, managers are having to make the best of all of the resources they've got, and productivity is extremely important for them. But Gordon may want to speak on that, or other colleagues.
Gordon. Yeah, just coming in briefly on that. I think we'll have certain occasions where if somebody wasn't feeling well, the thought of driving into the office or travelling into the office result in going off sick, whereas actually being able to work from home. And we've had this conversation in the committee before around, you know, kind of pre-COVID and being really serious about smarter working and flexible working, facilitating people being able to work from home and make a contribution rather than going off sick. Now, that's clearly not possible in all our roles. You know, we talked about many frontline services. So there may be an element of that as well. We do push for sickness to be recorded. I think it's unfortunate, you know, first committee of the new cycle where we're not able to give you an up-to-date figure. And I'll just squash any conspiracy theory that we got to a target after years of trying and then stopped reporting. It's not, that's not the case. But it would be interesting to see. So we're still making sure we push managers to manage sickness proactively and deal with it. And it's well embedded. But it will be interesting to see as we start to come out of the pandemic, whether some of the reasons for sickness going down start to be reversed as people are back out in society and you know, mixing more. So we're going to have to keep quite a close eye on that as soon as we're able to pull the reports out of the system.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. I've got no other questions, so I move that the update provided on the Council's overall position on sickness and absences at the end of March 2021 be noted. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Richard. All in favour? Thank you. Andrea, can I thank you for your report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 11 next is the diversity inclusion update. This is agenda pages 39 to 42 on your agenda. Mark Foot, the HR business partner, is with us this morning to present the report. Good morning, Mark. Before I start, Gordon, anything you'd like to add before we start? No? Mark, over to yourself. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, really happy today to present this report really on the work that the Council's done on staff diversity and inclusion. As terms of a bit of a background for it, members will no doubt be aware of the quality strategy which goes across the whole of the Council, which was agreed last year. And also on top of that, there's also then our people strategy, which looks about how we kind of work internally with our staff. And also at our last employment committee back in February, I also brought a couple of quite particular reports on the gender pay gap and also the outcomes of an equal pay audit. And all these papers form, I guess, part of that interaction towards our whole overall approach to diversity and inclusion. So particularly kind of just focus a little bit on a quote from the strategy here, which is about kind of knowing about how people perform better when they can be themselves. And so the aim to attract that, develop and retain a diverse workforce, staff group that feels welcome, supported, and obviously the values of the council are reflected within them is really key. And there's a real strong commitment to allow that to happen within the staff group. And we also kind of particularly kind of have three, I guess, kind of main areas that we have staff networks for as well. So we have a BAME group, which kind of is a working group set up with BAME colleagues, Black, Asian, multi-ethnic employees. We've got one for disabled staff and one for our LGBT employees as well. And they kind of a really kind of good first line of support for our staff who feel like they've got any issues, support, questions that they want to talk about in that setting and gain support from their colleagues with. I just want to take you through kind of some of the stats which help perhaps give a bit of a background to where we are currently with our position with the employees and our demographics. So at the end of the financial year, you can see the percentage of our workforce classed as BAME is just under 16%. Our disabled staff are over 4.5% and LGBT 2.4%. Perhaps what the report doesn't kind of perhaps say is that actually the majority of those are an upward trend as well. So they've been increasing over the last few years, which was really positive to see. In addition, we have declaration rates. That's obviously where we gain our figures from, and you can see from there we've got some relatively high percentages in terms of percentages of workforce declaring either their ethnicity, disability, and also their sexual orientation. One of the points I'll come to later is some further work we need to do to kind of increase those figures even more and to kind of make them even higher. And we also collect data in terms of our recruitment as well. And one of the questions we often get asked is about the success of our recruitment and are we attracting the right type of people? And interesting, kind of if you look at last year, which as kind of based on previous comments, last year was a bit of a strange one for recruitment wise as well as everything else. But in terms of recruitment wise, we've got over 36% of our applications for jobs were from BAME applicants. And you can see just over 6% as well from disabled and LGBT applicants, which again is really positive, really, and I think kind of not only has been increasing as well over the last few years, a good upward trend, and kind of reflects the diverse mix of the communities that we serve. And finally, in terms of the data, a brief mention in terms of another staff survey. While we kind of talked about a bit about survey fatigue, we have we just undertaken our biannual staff survey, which we're analysing the results of. But the one from 2019, there's two particular stats I think would be useful to pull out, and you can see there over 90% of respondents to that survey feeling that the council not only committed to equality and diversity, but also that they feel they're treated with fairness and respect. And I think kind of those stats on their own are really strong positive markers about the way in which staff feel about our approach. So the way we go about this, and the way we kind of help it develop, I guess, some of the knowledge and skills for diversity and inclusion is through a lot of our learning development sessions. So we have mandatory training that all staff are required to do, some additional sessions that managers are required to do. And we also do some more particular ones as well that around things such as, say, autism awareness, menopause awareness, of which kind of we're one of the leaders of, and also kind of a number of bits of kind of discussions rather than the formal training sessions or development sessions, actually kind of a big kind of conversation sessions. So things kind of called big conversations is how they're titled. This is essentially where we kind of have a number of people have an open conversation with any member of the workforce who comes along around some particular groups, particular settings, particular issues, characteristics that may be kind of affecting people. And they've been really positively attended, and I think kind of really welcomed by the staff, that openness and transparency in terms of discussions around some topics which could be seen as being sensitive. And finally, I think we also kind of get the approval, I guess, and kind of feedback on the way in which the work in which we're doing through external accreditation as well. And we do kind of display these, which kind of potentially kind of could help, I think, with some of our recruitments that we have. They include our Disability Confidence Scheme, where we've just refreshed that, and currently we're at level 2 of that national scheme. And we've also signed the Mindful Employer Charter with the NHS, which helps or recognise employers who are working better towards better mental health. And hopefully you can see that for some of the reports, not just through absence, but through the wellbeing reports we've heard this morning already. We've also rated one of Stonewall's top 100 employers as well for our work on LGBT. I say only one of 6 councils in England at the last rating who were in the top 100, and we've been in that situation since 2010, which again kind of I think displays some of our proactive work and positive work that we're kind of just submitting for our report, our new submission at the moment, and so we're hopeful we'll be able to get a positive outcome on that we can feed back to members kind of early next year. And finally, one of our most recent accreditations is we've just become signatory to an external Race at Work charter as well. So as it says in the report, led by the Business and Community organisation, this kind of helps promote kind of quality across the workplace on ethnicity and race as well. So I think kind of those external accreditations help give confidence, I think, as well, that the work that we're doing is on the right track, and helps kind of show that what we're doing is right, and also provides us with a challenge and a right challenge to keep promoting and to keep working, to keep doing the good things. And as mentioned, there's a few things that we still need to do. So the most recent staff survey, as I mentioned, we'll be analysing the results of that, and obviously kind of seeing whether those trends in terms of those 90% rates in terms of the way the staff feel about diversity and inclusion, if they're only maintained but developed and improved upon. The workers groups we're still continually working with, they're really valued by the staff, and we need to ensure that continues. Self-declaration rates, as I mentioned earlier, so some of them around the 80% mark. We know that some of the areas where potentially the declaration rates aren't at the highest are a number of those posts who don't have access, a lot of IT access to the self-service, so they rely on hard copy manual declaration sheets. So we'll be doing kind of quite a bit of work of that when we're able to kind of improve and boost some of those rates. And also the important qualities training as well. That really helps people, so not only with the skills, but also the knowledge and also the language, I think, that people use as well, all of which is kind of has a real strong impact. So I think in conclusion and the recommendations, you can see kind of hopefully the committee has to note that diversity inclusion is well managed within the council. We've had a number of bits of external accreditation which helps verify that. And also the demographics that we kind of set out, and also the next steps we've got to continually improve and to set up on our journey. So hopefully that kind of a brief overview of the report is helpful for the committee, and happy to take any questions on it.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Just before I'll take in order, I was going to say, Gordon, if you'd like to add a few words, and I'll come to Linda.
Yeah,
and Peter.
Just to add one bit of context, I think, to what Mark said. To my knowledge, I don't think we've reported or had this type of report to Employment Committee before. It tends to be the remit of the officer-led Equalities Board, and we obviously in Mrs. Posnett, we've got a lead member for this area. But I think what we wanted to do was to take the internal staff related work and give Employment Committee visibility of it, and it kind of starts to complete the picture around, you know, the various elements of priority with staff. So just that little bit of context.
Okay, thanks, Gordon. Linda.
Thank you. Again, another well thought out report, and I'm glad to see that it is there. I think looking at the figures for disabled, it seems quite low compared to the staffing levels. Do you think that maybe somebody with a hidden disability doesn't understand that they can put themselves down? I'm thinking of ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, these sort of things, which are a disability, but maybe people don't understand that they can put it down. Maybe they don't want to because they don't want to be classed as disabled. I'm not saying that, but I think maybe that if people were encouraged to put things down, they would realise that there's more support for them. You know, taking ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, you tend to have to go to the loo a lot more. So therefore they wouldn't be, the manager wouldn't say, well, that's the 5th time you've gone today. So it's encouraging people that have this sort of thing. And also it would improve our figures, the fact that we would employ somebody with this sort of disability. Do you think that people do come forward, those sort of things?
Thank you. I think that's a really good question. I think it's something which is at the forefront of my mind. I think you're right. We do see people who maybe don't declare their disability for a number of different reasons, and some of that could be because either an anxiety of not wanting to share that personal information, or it's because potentially they don't believe that their illness affects them in such a way that could be classed as a disability. There are quite a few personal issues, I think, kind of interact with some of these bits, exactly as you said. And I think that the next steps, as we can see, they kind of is about that promoting of that self-declaration rate. Will form exactly part of that, as you set out, the bit of the confidence, understanding why it is useful, important for people to know, and not only kind of telling your manager, which I think some employees may do, but also then ticking it on a form and putting it kind of as part of your kind of putting your name next to it is something maybe that some employees don't do as well. So I think the positive bits are, you know, we got a healthy declaration rate, but to keep it going, keep improving, we do need to keep promoting the message, saying about the kind of confidentiality, reiterating about the fact that it won't be held against them, and reiterating the positives as to why it's really important to let us know that, you know, about people's kind of health conditions if they are disabled, so we can work with them and we can put the support in place for them to kind of continue their employment, but also to encourage others as well. And to encourage others to declare, but also encourage others to come and work for us. So I think that, you know, one of the action points is wholly around the point that you've raised there. So I think that's is completely the right thing to pick up.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Just two brief points from me. I think you alluded to it on paragraph 10 around the kind of self-declaration percentages. Look, I mean, it looks very good, but obviously it looks like the openness of employees to declare their sexual orientation is far lower than the other areas. So I just wondered whether you had a comment on that. And I guess my final point is a point I've made again in the private sector in my personal career is around, I get the focus areas being around, you know, race, ethnicity, disability and sexual orientation. But I guess a data point that really interests me is around socioeconomic background. You know, are we attracting talent from, you know, different backgrounds? Doesn't matter which racial background you're from. You could be from a deprived area, for example. And if we are recruiting and actively trying to encourage applicants from deprived areas, I think that's something to shout about as well. So I just wondered if you had any comments on that as well.
Yeah, sure. The sexual declaration issue is probably similar to the disability one. I think in some way there's people see it as maybe in some way that's something that's not as visible. There's something that's quite sensitive, something that's quite personal. I think we've probably got some of the staff who still come to terms with what their sexual orientation is as well. So I think the important thing that we do is as before, I guess, is to support those declaration rates, remind people, reiterate them about the reasons why it's there. And the LGBT, I think, workers group that we've got as well are really supportive and really positive, and we can really help staff with their needs and what they need to do. So I think, yes, that definitely kind of falls into, I think, kind of some of the answer to the last question about the work about declaration rates we still need to do. I think that the other question about I guess kind of say class or socioeconomic background is a really one that's kind of probably kind of quite a long discussion we could have. In some way, it's difficult to gain some of the data on that to understand how we classify which background people come from. What we try and do, though, again, is through a number of different routes, is say with our apprentices, for example, looking at things like care leavers for apprentices and seeing what we can do to help kind of approach care leavers and apprentices to try and kind of make sure that some areas of some backgrounds of our residents get that initial step up and the initial help into career and into work. And that's kind of alongside other things such as Work Plus and Kickstart schemes as well that the council has just started to go upon. So I think that there are a number of different programmes that we have which I guess are particularly focused on addressing some particular areas of the community and particularly kind of socioeconomic backgrounds as well. And while some of it is difficult to measure at this stage, hopefully that's something that we can start to develop over the next couple of years.
Peter.
Yeah, I have seen elsewhere that organisations use the SAP Success Factors module in the system for employees to update a number of those characteristics. I mean, it's obviously voluntary; individuals have their own preference if they want to or not. But some of the questions on there that I've seen does relate to, background. Where are you from? A single parent family? These are really sensitive questions, but they perhaps can inform, some of the data points that I was mentioning.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I have Kevin and then I have Brenda.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I can't remember how long ago it was. Life seems to have been completely changed over the last 18 months in terms of time perspective. But a couple of years ago, maybe, I attended the Hidden Disabilities workshop we held here. And my eyes and my whole way of working changed on that day, I have to say. I've been doing a lot of work now in my local community with all ages with autism or on the spectrum. And I think just this last few months ago now, watching the Paralympics was another eye-opener for me, because clearly many people, I think, in the community think of disabled as people with problems, physical problems. And it's the hidden disabilities, as Linda said, I think that we really have to be careful about. In fact, I don't actually like the word disabled anymore, but it obviously has to be used. And I think it's important, and I'm really delighted that the council has been doing this, that we are aware of the issue of hidden disabilities, but also that we do need to make, I think, as much effort as we can to encourage people to report if they feel they have a hidden disability. But as Linda quite rightly says, it's important that managers know for what reason are they going to the loo too many times, or whatever it might be. I think it's really important. So it's a comment really rather than a question. Thanks, Mark.
Gordon.
Just one thing to add, and absolutely agree around declaration, which we've talked about. I think the other important factor is that we continue to support our managers to be able to have the right relationships and to be able to have the right conversations with people, and people feel comfortable to be able to have the conversations with their managers along the lines that we've talked about. We've got several hundred, if not more than 1,000 managers. That's difficult. We can't be naive about it, but that's what we have to continue to do as well, so that people feel, in terms of any of our equality strands, supported and able to have. We used to run a course, I think, called Having Difficult Conversations. I don't like that. It should be having conversations, just creating the right circumstances.
Thanks, Gordon. Brenda.
Thank you. My comments are also on the declaration rates, and I'm assuming that the ethnicity, the disability, and the sexual orientation have just not been answered. They've been left blank. So I think also the reason for this is it's none of their business. Why do they need to know? It's not going to make any difference to my employment. So you've also got to get over that hurdle as well. Why do they need to know? And we don't necessarily have to use the word disability. It could be limited mobility. It could be several questions under that. And state, have you got a hidden disability, or is your mobility limited? So there is some work on that, asking a different question, asking it in a different way and getting a different response. I think initially on some of the surveys I did years ago, I wouldn't answer my ethnicity, because I thought, well, why do they need to know? But for the NHS, yes, it is quite important, because you need probably a more targeted response. But for somebody working here, probably can't see the reason why you'd need to know. So we need to get over that hurdle. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything you want to come back on, Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I could just add, I think I completely agree. And part of the work that we'll be doing about promoting those declaration rates will include, hopefully, kind of address some of those facts. So the reason why, is really important to get people to understand why it's important to give us the information. Is one of the barriers that sometimes people, as a reason perhaps not to respond to. And the second bit, I think, is about that, I guess, that definition. I think as a couple of colleagues have said, that definition around something like disability, for example, the way that it's changed over the recent years, the way it can mean a number of different things, and the same terminology over things such as classification of a race and sexual orientation as well. The language is really important that we use, and means a lot to different people. And sometimes people feel that perhaps they're not covered or classed by some of the words that we use. So I think kind of using an explanation firstly on why it's important, and also what we mean by the terminology that we use, should hopefully kind of go hand in hand and start kind of promoting, say, some of the increase in some of those declaration rates for those members of staff.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I move that the fact that diversity and inclusion is well managed within the council, having received excellent accreditation, and its actions be noted, as in the report. And that the data collated on staff demographics detailed at paragraphs 9 to 12 and the next steps outlined within the report at paragraphs 19 to 20, which aim to further support and promote staff diversity and inclusion, be noted. Can I have a seconder, please? Okay, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Good report, Mark. Thanks ever so much for that. Look forward to coming back again with updates. So, item 12 is our penultimate report on the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report 2020-21. This is on pages 43 to 72 of your agenda pack. I know we've got Colin Jones, the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Manager, who will present the report, and we also have online with us Amy Walling, who is the report author. So I think I'll hand straight over to Colin. Welcome and welcome to Amy.
Good morning and thank you, Chair. Good morning to the committee. What I'd like to do is just present the highlights of this report on behalf of the Health, Safety and Wellbeing team on the work that we've undertaken during this year. And as you're all aware, it's been a year like no other for our teams. On page 3 of our report, it highlights some of the key facts that we've been involved in. And from the numbers, it states that we've had 522 injuries, of which of those injuries, 17 were RID or reportable. Those are the ones that are reportable to the Health and Safety Executive. As wellbeing has been a topic in many of the discussion papers throughout today, the counselling service have delivered 2,121 counselling sessions during this year. We've been involved heavily with making the environment in the workplace a safe place for our staff, and we've undertaken 187 COVID inspections and issued certificates to say that those premises are safe. We've been running a campaign to increase the number of near-miss reports. This is an important factor within health and safety culture, that we get to know what is actually happening. And we've been had reports of 378 of those such incidents, which has helped us to inform how we move forward with our guidance documents, etc. Injury, slips and trips and falls have been the constant highest category since I've been with the local authority, and on this year we've reported 182, which is in actual fact a 35% reduction, but that is probably due to the year that we've had. Physical assault and challenging behaviour, we've had 84 reported instances, and we've delivered more than 1,200 training sessions to our staff. And on page 4, we've done a pie chart to explain graphically where slip, trips and falls stands within the whole sphere of the accidents that we report. And of course, these topics areas are set by the Health and Safety Executive, of which we report on, so that we can get some consistent figures and comparators around other industries and other factors. And as you can see from that, there's the 182 slip, trips and falls. Going on through the reports, when we talk about the 17 RIDORs, they are the most serious of incidents that occur within the organisation, but I'm really pleased to report that thankfully they're not significant injuries. However, they have resulted in lost time, where people have felt the need that they're unable to continue to work due to the fact of that injury. Now, that in itself makes it reportable to the Health and Safety Executive also, so that's the information shared there. During the past year, there was a conscious decision made to suspend our auditing process. Now, the Health, Safety and Wellbeing team constantly monitor the performance of managers and departments in relation to several topics around health and safety, and this can be quite an intensive process for individual managers. So during the COVID year, we decided and made a conscious decision to withdraw from that and become more of a supporting rather than the monitoring role. So I think managers quite actually appreciated some of that to enable them to continue with the work that they had to do. I'm very pleased to announce that we've had no enforcement actions from the Health and Safety Executive, and though that doesn't go without saying that we haven't had some involvement from the Health and Safety. In fact, the Health and Safety have been quite prominent in visiting our premises and our systems to ensure that we are working in a safe way and providing our staff with a safe place to work and the procedures that we need to enable them to continue working safely. I've highlighted in this report some of the coronavirus activities that the county council team have been involved in, and you can see from those figures there's 220 sites were made COVID secure. Each site had a risk assessment to look at what changes we had made. All those risk assessments are then continuously monitored and amended as the changes and the rules nationally changed. We had to adapt to make sure we could maintain those places. We undertook over 700 monthly checks, and we issued more than 4,000 stickers, and I'm sure everybody who visits County Hall will see an example of how those stickers have worked. And I think, in all fairness, whilst it is quite alarming, it has actually worked during the height of that pandemic, how we could monitor where people were moving and direct them in a safe way. Further on into the report, we highlighted the training statistics. Those statistics are generally about the training offer that the health, safety and wellbeing team offer. So in addition to the workplace inspections of the audits, we actually do deliver lots of professional training. Some of that training is accredited to people like UCATA for asbestos as an example, but primarily we just maintain people's standards so that we have a great awareness of health and safety. You will see from the key performance indicators that we have been successful in 3 areas, item 3, 4 and 5 on page 13 of our report. However, we can't report on item 1 and 2 simply because of the decision to not undertake any audits during that period. And also the reporting of incidents around the changeover in electronic systems has made the data not available for the management training situation. So I can apologise for that. Moving on to the wellbeing activity, and this is a significant area for the County Council where we deliver talking therapies or counselling sessions for our staff. This is a completely self-referral process and it is anonymous, so nobody knows who is attending these, and we give support, and it is an incredibly highly respected service, and those people who've used it have found it as a significant benefit. Now, in addition to that, there is also an employee assistance program attached to our occupational health contract, and they also support some of our staff with an additional counselling service, which is available 24/7 rather than the traditional working hours where our staff would be available. Moving on through this report, I'd like to highlight the ISO 45001. This is the international safety standard for health and safety management, and we've been accredited this year to that standard. And this is about the work the health safety team have done in preparation around our policies, our guidance, our inspections, our auditing mechanism, our accident recording, the whole process. And during that process, I'm incredibly proud to notify the committee that we had no recommendations and no defects found. So we had an incredibly good audit inspection, and that was hugely important. And we've put into this report also a section around the activity of the wellbeing and counselling. And I think there was a question came from the council briefing around the priority of issues being presented. And I think on page 20 of this report, it does highlight the primary presenting issues that people come to the service with, and of course bereavement, anxiety, impression, personal relationships, stress at work, etc. are highlighted in that area. You will see from that there is a startling figure of 4 suicidal. The only thing I can say about that is that once that's disclosed within the counselling room, there is a mechanism where we seek support from outside agencies, the health service, the GP services, and other Samaritans and other services that help support that. So in conclusion, I would just like to ask the committee to acknowledge the work that the health and safety departments have undertaken during this difficult year and acknowledge the content of this report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Do I have questions from members or any comments? I think I would say, I think the report's excellent. It's very detailed, and I think again it's been the year that we've had as sort of is covered in the report. I think it's covered very thoroughly. This did go to a cabinet briefing earlier on this week, and it was very well received. So thank you, Amy, for the report. So if we have no questions, no, Brenda.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure whether it's because of the year we've had, but I've noted on here that the staff attended health and safety courses, 1,290. That seems quite low. Is it because of this year? Is it reflected of this year and usually higher? I would have thought there were semi-compulsory to attend health and safety courses. Thank you.
Yeah, just if I could respond to that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that question, and I agree. It does seem a little bit low from previous years, and part of this is because we have a 3-year rolling programme. So for a refresher, it would probably be a 3-year rolling programme. So there may be elements due to the COVID, but also there may be that next year might be in a more heavily condensed reporting period for training. So over the next 3 years, we can monitor and make sure that that is captured. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Can I just say well done as well on the ISO 45001. I know how hard it is to go through that without any comments or observations, and really well done to the team on that. So I move that the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report 2021 be noted, and the extensive work undertaken in partnership with departments by the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Service be fully endorsed. Can I have a seconder, please? Okay, thank you. Mr. Bedford or Mr. Shepherd? All in favour? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Amy, for your report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our final report today is on the Operational Change Policy and Procedure Action Plans on page 73 to 78 of your agenda pack. And I believe Anna is going to present this report, so I'll hand over to you, Anna.
Thank you. Yes, this is just to say it's the usual report that we get at this committee, showing the action plans that are underway for compulsory redundancy and those that have already been completed, both of which are detailed at the 2 appendices attached.
Okay, thank you. Short and sweet. Any questions or comments? Members happy to that the update provided on the current action plans, which contain provision for compulsory redundancy and details of the progress in their implementation, be noted. Okay, thank you, members. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Peter, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Item 14, any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent. As I said, we don't have any urgent items. Date of future meetings. Thank you for all attending this meeting. It's good to see you back in the chamber. I would like to remind you that the next meeting of this committee is scheduled to be held on the 2nd of December at 10 a.m. and future meeting dates are also listed on the agenda. So with that, can I wish you a rest of a good day, safe journeys, and see you all soon. And thank you to Anna. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Sarah.